Welcome to the basketball party. I'm Sam Ekstrom. Today, I'm going to tell these guys why Rudy Gobert is the Timberwolves MVP through the first two games. They're up 2-0 on the Suns. Let's break it down.
This is Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. It's endless Minnesota Timberwolves talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota basketball party on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Wolves talk every Wednesday here on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Yes, it's the Minnesota basketball party returning to you with a full panel of 5 Wolves experts. My name is Sam Ekstrom, hosting the show at Sam Ekstrom on X. The Timberwolves are up 2-0 on the Phoenix Suns with 2 convincing victories in front of lively crowds at home. We'll, of course, give you all of our takeaways from Game 2. The physicality ratchets up, and the officials are letting him play. We'll talk about how that impacts the series, and Jaden McDaniels with a breakout. Rudy Gobert has been excellent. So many big performances to highlight, and we'll predict how things go as the series shifts back to Phoenix. But let's meet our panel with today's opening tip.
I'm Jack Borman, co-host of the Locked On Wolves postcast with my man Luke Inman, and I'm going to tell you why this series is over. It's over, and we'll get into it.
I'm Ron Johnson, former Gophers wide receiver, former NFL wide receiver, Gophers Hall of Famer. I'm channeling my inner Jaden McDaniels today, Anthony Edwards. Like, I got the team warm-up, I got the post-game sunglasses, and I'm going to tell you guys why Anthony Edwards is really showing the world he might be the next MJ.
I'm Ben Beacon, host of the daily Locked On Wolves podcast, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how the officiating is 100% helping the Timberwolves in this series, and I think it's going to be a big key here as they try and close out the Suns.
I'm Reggie Wilson, sports director at Care 11. I thought the officiating was kind of trash last night, but we won't go there. But I think from the performances that we've seen from the Wolves the past 2 games show that they are the biggest threat in the West to the Nuggets.
Ooh. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And on FanDuel last night, if you had put $10 on Jaden McDaniels to be the game's leading scorer, you would have brought home a cool 1,000. 100-1, Jaden McDaniels as the leading scorer last night. He scored 25, and he stole the show. Offensive end, defensive end. I think Jaden McDaniels is your Game 2 MVP. I think Anthony Edwards is your Game 1 MVP with a 25-point blowout win. But I think over the 96 minutes that were played in these first 2 games, I think Rudy Gobert is your guy. I think he's been the most consistent for 2 games, the most impactful. He's playing on the perimeter. He's playing under the basket. He's making shots on the offensive end. He's making free throws on the offensive end. He has been like a plus player on offense and a lockdown defensive player. That's my biggest take from these first 2 games, is that you've had these individual performances kind of around this solid foundation that Rudy provides you. This is how you win championships, is when you have that kind of effort on both ends of the floor from a lot of your guys. I love what Rudy Gobert is bringing. That's my big takeaway. Jack, what do you got?
Yeah, I was in the building for both of those first 2 games, and my biggest thing from Game 2 is that the Suns quit for the second game in a row. The Suns quit with a lot of time left on the clock. And I've come back to a tweet that Jim Peterson sent out before the series of kind of like a why you should believe in this Timberwolves team. And he talked about the unity of the group, not just the players, but the coaching staff, different members of the organization, and how of all the, nearly 3 decades that he's been around the team, that this is the most connected, most family-like group that he's been around. And it's really showed. I mean, like, the Suns just do not have any type of dog in them at all. And the Timberwolves continue to just come at them in a relentless fashion over and over and over again with their defense. I mean, the Suns had 3 games, the entire 82-game season of a single game offensive rating under 100, which is an elite mark for a defense The Wolves have done it in back-to-back games to start the playoffs. I mean, they did it in that second matchup with the Suns in the regular season, so they were one of the three. They've now done it twice in a row in the playoffs. And you got to be really impressed with what the Timberwolves did on the big three, right? And I think that's why the Suns are quitting, because that is their entire team, and the Timberwolves have dominated the big three so far in 2 games. But as a whole, in game 2, they had 52 points on 42% shooting. They had 12 turnovers. And the Timberwolves had 31 points off of 20 Suns turnovers. And just the way that the Timberwolves have been forcing all these mistakes and just capitalizing on all of them, and the way that this crowd and this team have kind of risen to the level that each other set, just with energy, and they just have completely overwhelmed the Suns. And it's really no surprise to me that a team that is made up of 3 pretty finesse players that are all stars, that are, Hall of Fame caliber scorers, at least those parts of their games, to shut them down in the fashion that they did, and to see that kind of grinding defense over the course of a game just completely wear them down, mixed with a crowd that is just hunting to break the spirit of an opposing team. Mm-hmm. I would be absolutely shocked if the Suns win a game, especially now that Grayson Allen is hurt. He turned that same ankle pretty badly. That's a huge thing for Phoenix. I think it's time to get your brooms out and get them ready, because I think the next home game at Target Center will be game 1.
Wow. So he's saying Wolves sweep. There is danger probably in overreacting to regular season series. They're played at different times throughout the year. There's different variables that come into play, injuries and rest. And now everyone based this series based on the 3 regular season games. And the Wolves were underdogs at some sports books in this series, which now looking back seems ludicrous. Ron Johnson, what do you got from game 2?
My biggest takeaway was I was a little bit nervous at the early foul calls of Karl-Anthony Towns. Like, some of his defensive plays didn't really make sense. I think everybody saw it. He was ISO'd at the top of the key with Kevin Durant. And with that, I think it was like 7 seconds left on the clock. There's no reason to get up in his space. You're not faster than Kevin Durant. You're not quicker than Kevin Durant, but you're longer and you're stronger. Let him decide which way he wants to go, and then you stop him. You have to react to Kevin Durant. You can't force Kevin Durant, because he's light in the butt. So if you bump him, which he did, you're gonna create a foul. He's gonna do the flailing, and he's gonna, like, we saw a lot of that. I will say a lot of the bumps the refs let play, but like the rebound, jumping on top of Devin Booker's head, that was questionable. It could be seen as like, look, he's just up in the air, and then he comes down on Devin Booker. But that worried me at first. And then Jaden McDaniels took over. And I think that's what kind of eased everybody's mind. You see him drive and dunk. You see him hit the big open shots. You see the lane collapse because they're trying to worry about Anthony Edwards, and he's Johnny on the spot, in the right spot. You saw him and Mike Conley hit shot after shot when they get the wide open shot. Because Naz Reid even missed a couple open threes, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like Naz Reid is wide open and he's not knocking these down. But Jaden McDaniels stepped up. He had a silent 25 points. Like, that 25 points wasn't like loud enough where the announcers kept talking about him and kept saying how great of a game. It was more like, wait, what? Did Jaden McDaniels just get 25 points? Like, is he the leading scorer? Like, everybody's talking about Suns, is it over? But nobody's saying Jaden McDaniels is the guy of the game. He's long, he's wiry, and he held Kevin Durant as a group to 18 points, Devin Booker to 20. Like, normally one of those guys gets 38. The fact that to combine they only had 38 points, that's a recipe for a sweep. But I will say, going back to that altitude in Arizona, it is going to give the Suns a little bit of a lift. They're going to have their home crowd to get them going, because that home crowd in Minnesota, that's the other part of it, they were awesome. Every single big moment, that crowd was ready to erupt. And I think that also gave that team just the boost they needed.
Yeah, who was saying before the show, the Suns are actually favored in game 3, which is a little interesting, with Grayson Allen seemingly out. I don't know if you can come back from 2 ankle sprains or twists in back-to-back games, but let's see what Ben Beacon thinks about game 2.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just the ability to sustain defensively, and Jack hit on it a little bit, but I mean, it was basically 48 minutes. Like, you could probably count on one hand the number of defensive lapses the Wolves had, and a couple of them were followed by immediate Chris Finch timeouts. I think he did a great job at not that, I mean, obviously this was a close game until late in the third quarter, and it technically it was close until, into the fourth quarter, close-ish. But I thought Chris Finch handled the timeouts well. I thought that the just, 48 minutes of sustaining defensively, it was just unbelievable. We talked a little bit before going live about how I think the rest is helping this team right now. Having 2 days off in between games, they get another 2 off before game 3. And, that's got to help when you play as hard as they do. And Jack also mentioned that the Suns they're not playing hard. They're not playing playoff level intensity. It's almost like how, Dallas played in the first game of that Clippers series, where it's like, they're wondering why the Wolves are playing so hard. And it's like, well, it's the playoffs, and it helps the Wolves. That rest is only going to help when the Wolves play as, at the breakneck speed that they do defensively. It's only going to help them over the course of the series. I think that, and then offensively, the other thing is, and this is like, if you just look at the series, and it's easy to be like, oh, they won a game, without Anticat doing much offensively. Well, the Suns didn't get a whole lot from their stars offensively, and they lost by double digits in both of these games. Durant had a big game 1, but I guess that is the easiest way to contrast these two teams, right? It's that the Wolves are a team. They're a group of guys that play great defensively, that have some great individual defenders. They've also got some really talented offensive players too. But to be able to have Jaden McDaniels lead you in scoring, and nobody else scores more than 18 points, but yet you still get a 12-point win. And the Suns, I mean, they got 20 from Booker. They got an inefficient 14 from Bradley Beal, and a quiet night from Kevin Durant. And nobody else on that team was able to step up. And you add in the Grayson Allen injury, and they only made 8 threes in the game. That's a problem. The Wolves are going to out-volume the Suns from outside the arc, and that's a huge part of the series too. But my biggest thing is just the all-out tenacity on defense to sustain against a team that does have offensive weapons, and in theory should be able to exploit what the Wolves do the most of, which is allow mid-range jumpers. But Rudy's been so good. Rudy in space, like, man, I'm listing like 7 things here, but Rudy in space on the defensive end has been so good. The Suns thought, like, if we get Rudy in space, we can beat him off the dribble. They're not beating him off the dribble. Like, Rudy Gobert in space has been incredible. He was switching. He was obviously playing drop. And when he was in drop, Bradley Beal couldn't get off an open mid-range jumper. Just really, really impressive. The defensive performance for the Wolves. And Gobert and McDaniels are obviously the keys, but as a team, just really, really impressive. And for the Suns to score under 100 in both of these games, I don't think anybody was expecting it to be quite to this level. But really impressive game 2 from the Wolves on defense.
Yeah, and Reggie Wilson, I was worried you wouldn't be with us today. I thought the Lakers' loss might have taken your soul from you. I wasn't sure you'd make it to this morning. You did. We're glad you're here. Instead of talking about the Lakers, tell us your take on the winning Wolves.
Sam, you could have just did without that. Like, there was no reason. It's been
people
2
are
days.
here. People are tuning in. Brandon in the comments is here just to see if you're still hating on the Wolves. People want to hear from Reggie, but they also like to see us bust your chops too.
Brutal. Yeah, Lakers gonna get swept too. But anyway, so in the building last night, it was cool atmosphere, cool experience. One of the most fun moments for me was Rudy on the break. Jack, do you remember that? Rudy on the break, and he tries to do a little Euro, and he gets fouled, and he just throws up some junk, and it goes in. And at first, they were not going to count the basket. Went to a review. Turns out there was a foul on Rudy and one. That was a really fun moment. But a couple things that were really critical to me yesterday. The Suns went up by 8 in that second quarter, and I was like, oh man, it kind of had that feel like, oh man, this might not be the Wolves' night. Like, they weren't making shots. Like, the game was just clunky in that second quarter. And then the kerfuffle happened between Booker. So one thing, I think I tweeted this last night, but Devin Booker doesn't push off. He shoves off. And he shoved Jaden McDaniels into a nice little, high percentage jumper yesterday. And then right back down the floor, Jaden was just like, you're not shoving me, I'm shoving you. And it resulted in Jaden getting a technical, and Booker got a common foul. But I feel like that kind of woke the Wolves up a little bit, and we just kind of saw that effort just kind of just kind of go from there. And they ended up only being within 1 point at halftime, which I thought was huge for them going into the half. And then in the third, they had this little stretch that I feel like really kind of put the game away for them. Cat had 3 fouls early on, and it really kind of put him in trouble. He sat for most of the first half after those 3 fouls that he got in the first quarter. And he came out energized, knocked down a few free throws, hit a 3. Ant hits a mid-range. He didn't have his best night last night, but he hits a mid-range, and that kind of energized the crowd. And the Wolves really never looked back from there. And I tweeted, like, the Wolves defense last night was nasty. Like, it was contested shots everywhere. They were clogging the lanes. They were getting boards. I think what I saw from the Suns was just, I tweeted, dumbfounding. You got a team with Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, and Kevin Durant. And I mean, these are 3 of the best shot makers in the league, 2 of which are going to be representing Team USA this summer. And just nothing. Like, KD had a quiet night. Like, the mid-range shots that he's normally hitting, he's clank. You know, I give a lot of credit to the defense as well, but just premium shot makers. They had Bradley Beal out there looking old. Like, he was just not looking like himself. The Bradley Beal that we've come to know in the league. And I don't know what's going on with Booker. He's just not playing how, usually it doesn't matter how good the defense is on him. He's making shots. And after the game, he was just like, I'm looking within the team. We got to figure this out. I just think they're too far gone for figuring it out. They may get a game in Phoenix, but I think from the defensive pressure that we saw from the Wolves last night, and if Jaden McDaniels is going to be hitting shots, maybe not like last night, but if he's going to be hitting shots with any type of consistency, that's why I think the Wolves will be the biggest threat to Denver in the West.
Yeah, Jaden Mad is like the best Jaden, it seems like. And we didn't get to see playoff Jaden last year, remember, because he punched a wall. That was not the best version of Mad Jaden. Mad Jaden on the basketball court is what we want to see. And he was hitting high degree of difficulty shots at times last night too. Like, he has a bag offensively. He can dip into that.
Sam, did you see the one where he like drives under the basket and just like twirls in the air?
Contorts himself.
Yeah, like that was unreal performance from him last night.
Yeah, I mean, the Wolves don't necessarily have an excess of players that thrive in the mid-range, and he actually can do some mid-range stuff. We've got plenty more to get to, including how the lack of whistles and the increase in physicality is it helping the Wolves or the Suns. That's next on the Minnesota Basketball Party. Brought to you first by DoorDash. Want to make mom smile? Mother's Day is coming up. Start Mother's Day with flowers or surprise her with gifts from the brands she loves, delivered the very same day with DoorDash. Does mom have a sweet tooth? Is she techie? Is she a beauty connoisseur? Is she outdoorsy? No matter what she's into, make her smile with a fruit or flower bouquet, makeup, tech gear, workout gear, and plenty more. Get thoughtful gifts she deserves with the convenience that you need. Choose same-day delivery or schedule a week ahead for when flowers and gifts should arrive to her door with DoorDash. Get all your Mother's Day gifts in one place. Get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA, one word. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. We're also presented by Monopoly Go. Yep, I'm competitive. I am competitive like Jaden McDaniels. If I lose, I punch a wall. Well, with Monopoly Go, I've downloaded it like 150 other million people have. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations. You build up amazing cities that bring you big money. And the best part is messing with your buddies because there's leaderboards that show you who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. You can heist their vaults and take the riches for yourself, and you can charge them rent on iconic properties. So my competitive side loves it, like teaming up with my friends and people all over the world in timed tournaments to earn some big rewards as well. Get in the game with Monopoly Go. Join your friends. Download it today for free on the App Store or Google Play. Minnesota basketball party rolls on. Locked On Sports Minnesota. Please subscribe. Help us get to 8,000 subscribers. Check us out as well in the Locked On Wolves podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts, and watch those postcasts with Jack Borman and Luke Inman after every single game. Let's talk about the refereeing. Let's start with Ron Johnson. Ron, definitely a shift in how games are officiated in the postseason. The referees have been under scrutiny for their calls in other games. I wouldn't say so much the Timberwolves series, but there is a noticeable change in what they allow to happen. What's your take on how the officiating has affected this series and who it benefits, and just the officiating in general that you've observed, I guess, in this postseason?
I will say referees are humans, and so they know players they have tendencies to do certain things. I think they're alert to Karl Anthony Towns, and this is probably from the coach as well. Like, watch for this. His willingness or his ability to just run somebody flat over, his lack of ability to get out of the way sometimes and sidestep a guy. Like, he reminds me of like a kid sometimes that's just too big for their body and just can't stop because he just runs into people. He just runs people over. He just bumps people. So they're going to call it on him. Everybody else, I think they're giving the benefit of the doubt, to be honest. Rudy Gobert, he's bumping and pushing and banging, and they're fighting and they're letting it go. There's a lot of body, like even in the post, like guys are getting banged around. I watched the Clippers. I saw the same thing in the Clippers game. They were letting those guys versus the Mavs. They were letting those guys just absolutely bang. I saw James Harden lower the shoulder on Kyrie because Kyrie was kind of banging him, trying to guard him early on. So it feels like they're letting some stuff go. So I think it's benefiting the Wolves. Here's the one thing that I noticed, though, in the third quarter. The Wolves at one point, I think with like a minute something to go, was 9 for 9 on free throws, and the Suns had yet to take a free throw in the third quarter, get a foul called. And so, or take a free throw, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And so like to have that lack of free throw attempts, 9 for 9 versus the Suns, and the Suns end up getting one in the end, it's benefiting the Timberwolves right now. I think it's playing to their game. Also, like, I think the TV announcer said it, and I agreed. Like, Karl Anthony Towns getting the fourth foul in that moment wasn't detrimental to the team. And I think it was more so what's going on with the rest of the team. So I think the officiating, they're letting them play. Like, and I'm fine with that. I just don't understand how you watch the monitor. You see Devin Booker, as Reggie would say, like, you're not going to push me. You push me. Don't push me back. Like, it was such a, like, you both should just get a tech, or you both should just get coming fouls. Let's move on. Like, Devin Booker, like, he got bumped and he pushed him on purpose next. That's the tech. Then you shove him. That's the tech. Like, it's not, oh, that's a push common foul. There was no reason for Devin Booker to do what he did, but I get it. The refs are trying to just say, hey, look, we saw it. Oh, they both get a foul, but he gets the tech. But it is benefiting the Wolves right now.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing I fear about Game 3 is the overcorrection that the Wolves had, the whistle advantage arguably in this game, 30-19 free throw discrepancy. Will that change with Phoenix back home? I don't know if they said anything. Maybe Jack can enlighten me. Jack, why don't you go next? Was there anything post-game from Phoenix about this? I know Vogel was very upset. He got a tech. And your feelings on how this has been officiated so far.
Yeah, no, I mean, post game we really don't have time to be there for the Wolves guys,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I mean, you also have to think it too that the Suns shouldn't be getting more free throws than the Wolves, anyways, because the Wolves are driving the ball to the rim more, they're playing more in the paint, they're playing more physical, they've been more active on the offensive glass, they've been getting to the rim more easily, getting more shot attempts at the rim. So even if there is an overcorrection, I thought there was an overcorrection in the first half of this game. And the Suns got pretty much every call that, that they were used to getting in the regular season. I saw a bunch of people on Twitter talking about how it was a very regular season whistle that the Suns were getting. And you think about, too, the Wolves couldn't make a three. The Wolves weren't getting calls of their own. Their two best players were playing, pretty subpar basketball. They had a bunch of sloppy turnovers, and Phoenix was getting all these calls, like I said, and the Wolves were down 1 point at halftime. So even if there is some sort of overcorrection in Game 3 or a second overcorrection, there is no reason why we shouldn't believe that the Wolves can just overcome that, because everything the Wolves have been doing is so much more sustainable than Phoenix, on both ends. And I think it's it's tough for a team like Phoenix, I guess, in the sense when you're not getting all those whistles because they're not a super physical team. And they have 3 players who are all tremendous offensive players, but they're all more finesse players. And obviously Yusuf Nurkic is really physical, but he flops just as much, maybe more than any big man that's not named Joel Embiid in the league. I mean, being there in the arena and seeing it, it's embarrassing almost how much he's flopping for how big and how strong of a dude he is, because he's got nothing for Rudy Gobert. And Gobert owns that matchup. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just been really fun, too, to get an answer to the question like, hey, what if Jaden McDaniels didn't get a really bad whistle like he does too many nights? And, I mean, for him to play a combined 79 minutes and have 5 fouls in the first 2 games, and he's a combined plus 42 for the Wolves, I mean, it's incredible to see what that's turned into.
Yeah, 41 minutes for Jaden last night. Yeah, and
one other thing, Sam, you mentioned Frank Vogel, the temper tantrum that he had in that third quarter. I don't know how much of that was shown on TV, but he was stomping his feet, jumping up and down, crying, screaming at Zach Zarba, and I mean and he did a Joe Mazzulla and ran out onto the crowd. I mean, I have no idea how that guy did not get teed up, but it was hilarious to watch it.
Bally showed the replay of him running out to the free throw line where he got the tech, and that was after a play that was not a bad call. Like, I don't know if he was upset about Conley diving and being on the line or something. He wasn't. So he was just letting it boil over. Maybe I think there was a missed call when Durant dribbled it off. They said off his foot. It wasn't off his foot. I was gonna chip in too that the Wolves' best players, Cat and Ant, haven't really had a game yet where they've been able to get to the rim, which is where the Wolves generate a lot of whistles and free throws, because they've been doubled so much. Ant has been doubled so much, and he beat them with jump shooting in game 1 and passing last night. If they can figure out a way to get Ant isolated a little more, getting downhill, where he can get to the rim, that's like the best version of Ant, is where he's getting relentlessly to the cup. Let's kick it over to Reggie Wilson. Just your thoughts on sort of the physicality of this series.
Yeah, it was interesting because to your point, Sam, it seemed that they were not trying to let Anthony Edwards beat them. That was like their adjustment from game 1 to 2. But it's like, yeah, we're not going to let this guy beat us, but then we're not going to make shots on the other end. And also Jaden McDaniels is going to make shots for the Wolves. So I think that whole thing, you talk about the Wolves' depth and their bench players, playing big minutes and scoring points. Another solid night from Na, and I think it's just kind of hard to think about a team that has so much money tied up into 4 players, 5 you want to count Conley, and they still have the type of depth that they have. And it's interesting watching because I tweeted last night, there was a time, like especially in that second quarter, they were calling everything on the Wolves. Like if somebody touched Devin Booker, it was a foul. Kevin Durant gets his call. So if you just guard him straight up and he's easy to kind of, push a little bit because he's not really, any type of size. He's not very, very weighty. So, if there's any type of play where even he kind of gets pushed back even a little bit, they're calling a foul. And it's just so interesting because Ron's point is true. I think the refs have just kind of had it with Karl Anthony Towns, and they're just like, you know what, whatever you do, we're watching you, buddy. It's like
50 Cent once said that about the show Ghost and Power. He's like, whatever they said your daddy did,
he did that. He did that. It's just so funny watching Cat because like it's so funny. Like Cat does remind me of a kid sometimes where like he's like a habitual line stepper. He's just like, can I do it? And then they call it. He's like, oh my God, what do you mean? Like, last night he had the screen on Bill, and he kind of put his foot out there a little bit, trying to be slick, like putting it out there just a little bit more. And Bill tripped and fell on the floor, and they called the foul instantly. He's just like, oh my God, I can't, because in Cat's mind, he never fouls, and he's always getting fouled. And it's a tough life for him, living in that reality. And so it's just very interesting seeing that. But then, I feel like the refs kind of came out and kind of course corrected. I feel like they felt that they, kind of tilted to Phoenix in the foul category in that second quarter, even with the Wolves being able to climb back to just a 1-point deficit at the half. And they started off the quarter. It was like 5 fouls to 1 on Phoenix. And that kind of allowed the Wolves to kind of get back into the game. And that was another turning point, I feel like, for the Wolves with all the physicality.
Ben, put a bow on this conversation. What do you got?
Yeah, the officiating in this series was always going to be interesting. Phoenix, depending on how you want to slice it and dice it, they were top 3 in offensive free throw rate this season, and the Wolves were top 5 as well. But they go about it in different ways, and a couple of the guys, and actually Sam, you said this too. Phoenix doesn't get to the rim very often. Minnesota does. I mean, Phoenix was actually 25th in offensive rim attempt rank at cleaning the glass this year. So there were 24 teams that shot the ball at the rim more frequently than Phoenix, because as we all know, their quote unquote big 3 likes to shoot from the mid range. They don't want to get all the way to the rim. In some cases, they can't get all the way to the rim. And Minnesota was 11th in offensive shot attempts at the rim this year. And so it was, or excuse me, they were 11th in accuracy. I'm looking at the wrong number. Frequency, they were also 11th in frequency. So they were 11th in both frequency and accuracy, Minnesota was, in the regular season. So they're going about it in different ways. And the Wolves in this series aren't actually getting to the rim all that often. They're still shooting the ball at the rim more often than Phoenix. And a lot of that is lobs to Rudy. Phoenix is still getting to the line a little bit because that's what they do. And they get these ticky-tack calls on the perimeter. We saw it, as Reggie said, second quarter. We saw it a little bit in the third quarter when the Wolves got into the penalty late in the quarter. You saw Durant kind of flailing around on the perimeter, and there were a couple of McDaniels fouls where he just kind of got underneath him a little bit, trying to fight through screens, and Durant got the call. There's going to be some of those. That's the way Phoenix plays. That's the way Durant plays. That's the way Booker plays. And that's how the officials are going to call it, especially in Phoenix. It's, can the Wolves flip the script on the other end of the floor, increase their 3-point volume, increase as much as they can their attempts at the rim in order to get to the line more often. And obviously in this game that happened, right? Minnesota out free throwed Phoenix 30-19. But to everyone that's already made this point, to that point, it's because they're being more aggressive. And even though they haven't gotten to the rim, they're still, like, just the overall pressure they're putting on the Phoenix defense compared to what Phoenix is able to do to Minnesota is why the Wolves have that edge. So, and also that bodes well for the playoffs. Like I opened the show by saying 100% the playoff officiating, which I would say 3/4 of this game was more like playoff officiating since the second quarter. That's going to help Minnesota because of the way they get to the free throw line, because they are more physical and they try to get to the rim in order to get fouled. Whereas Phoenix is trying to get you in the penalty by flailing around on the perimeter and, getting these, Durant had a couple of the 10, 12 footers where he's fading away. And if you contest a little too much, they decide that you get your body into him, and they called, Jaden got called for one of those too in this game. I think Monte Morris might've gotten one too. Monte Morris, excuse me. I think that in the long run, and to this point in the series, it has helped the Wolves that the officials are generally allowing a little bit more. I do think that changes a little bit in Phoenix, just with the way that we know the NBA is officiated. But can the Wolves keep playing their game, not get caught up in things like Vogel and the Suns did in Game 2? And I think Minnesota will be just fine. And the way that the games are being officiated will help the Wolves overall in this series.
Speed round next on the Minnesota Basketball Party. Compliments and criticisms from games 1 and 2. That's coming up. Brought to you today by FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL, and baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet all of those games. New customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed, $150, 150, win or lose after that first bet. I'm eyeing up Game 3, Wolves in Phoenix late Friday night. The Wolves are plus 146 on the money line, +4 on the spread. That seems juicy. Check that out at FanDuel.com/lockedon, where you can get started. Get $150 for free when you sign up. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We're also presented by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is a great opportunity to get things off your chest. Big or small, certain things can get to you in life. There's a lot to life that could be racing in your mind. You want to figure out how to prioritize the things that matter to you as well. And you want to do it to somebody that's unbiased in your life. So sometimes, we care a lot about our favorite sports teams. We get pretty riled up, and that's really, really important to us here. And sometimes there are things more important than your favorite sports teams that you want to get off your chest. And therapy can look different for everyone. So check it out with BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give it a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Speed round, gentlemen, a minute each. It's a compliment and a criticism. Now, we've been very complimentary of the Wolves in these first couple of segments, but let's go X factors. Let's go under the radar heroes or plays or moments from these first two games. Let's start with Ben Beacon. Kick us off. A compliment for the Wolves.
Yeah, I would say broadly for the team, the compliment, we already talked a ton about the defense. So we'll go to the offensive side. I think the 3-point volume has been huge. They've had a massive advantage in both attempts and makes from outside the arc in this series. And obviously credit the defense for limiting what Phoenix has been able to do. The Wolves didn't shoot the ball well from outside the arc in this game. If they'd shot it just a little bit better, this game's not even as close as it was. They missed some relatively open threes in this game. They had a couple of heat checks, from Ant and Cat that were kind of silly shots. But go back to game one and an individual player, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And also he was great in this game too. He didn't shoot it as well, but he had 5 assists off the bench, played heavy minutes when Cat was out with foul trouble. Alexander-Walker did. So I would say the 3-point volume and also suppressing what the Suns have been able to do, that kind of margin outside the arc has been really big for the Wolves.
Reg.
So I mean, it's easy to compliment the defense, obviously. But I guess I want to give some love to Finchie. He's been highly criticized in his playoff career with the Timberwolves, and I feel like he's pulling all the strings. He's got the rotations together, and a lot of the success that the Wolves have had is because he has just trusted his guys to be able to go out there and play and dig themselves out of tough situations and play through things. I can't remember who mentioned it earlier, but a couple years ago when they blew those multiple double-digit leads to Memphis, Charles Barkley gave Finchie hell about not calling timeouts when he should, and he doesn't even play around with it anymore. He's just like, okay, I don't like that timeout. Let's regroup. Let's get it together. And I think he deserves his flowers because he's growing as the Wolves are growing. And I think that's a very positive thing as this team kind of tries to make his run in the postseason. And he's just continuing to figure things out as the team on the floor is continuing to figure things out. So I'm giving Finchie his flowers.
He had a great challenge last night. It was early in the game, so hard to tell if it would have mattered, but he challenged that Gobert fast break, and it actually saved him 4 points because Gobert got credit for the 2. Then they got an offensive rebound on his free throw miss and got 2 more points. So it was actually a 4-point challenge by Finchie last night. I'm going to go with something very specific. The rebounding of Anthony Edwards. I just felt like he was coming off the weak side, just going after everything last night. And I know they got out rebounded by 2 last night, which is a big change from a record-breaking margin in game 1. But the rebounding from Ant, I think, has been really strong. And the rebounding as a team has been really relentless. The Suns took advantage of some long rebounds last night. They were well positioned for some of those. But I think the Timberwolves have been crashing the glass pretty relentlessly. It's been pretty impressive for me to watch. And I love seeing Ant get involved in that because when he's not guarding, a Booker or a Durant, I think he's really committed to getting to the rim. So that's been pretty cool. How about you, Jack Borman?
Yeah, I was going to go with Jaden McDaniels' offensive rebounding as a happy learned how to putt situation with him, being able to be more impactful as an offensive player when he doesn't have the ball. But since you just touched on the rebounding, I'll go with the fact that the Timberwolves have gotten the lead to blowout territory in both of these games. It's something that they've struggled with all season. In that, they've gotten it to 12 or 13, which is, good, but definitely still opens the door for a quick 5 or 6-0 run that the team can kind of get back into it and still feel like there's a chance. But they've just really, poured lighter fluid all over the campfire and just gotten it out of hand to a point where the Suns just have nothing for them. And I think, again, it's like so many things that we've talked about today with that we've been hoping to see from the Timberwolves all season and have gotten it in the first 2 games. I think that's something that's been really important for them so far in games 1 and 2.
Compliment from Ron.
I'm going to compliment the fact that from games 1 and 2, they're letting the game come to them. Like, they're not forcing it. Anthony Edwards was the guy in the first one. In the second one, he didn't force it. Like, I was worried about that after we saw Cats. And again, that was so long ago, but it's his chase for 70 points where you felt like, okay, they got to get it back together. And so coming from that game to this game, like when you saw Naz Reid miss a couple, you didn't see him keep shooting. You saw him make that second or third pass to get it to the next guy who might be open. So I'm very complimentary, I guess the word I say, of the way they are able to distribute the ball and realize who's the guy. Last night it was Jaden McDaniels, and they kept finding ways to get him the ball and get him involved in the offense. And I think that's a very smart team, whether this is Mike Conley telling them this. I think in the post game, he said it too. He's like, nobody wants to win more than me. Nobody wants this team to step up more than me. And I think he's trying to show them like, look, let me lead the way. I will get us to the right spots. And I really do like that. Like, you didn't see it being forced, where at times for the Suns, it felt like KD or Devin Booker were going to force it up regardless of what was in their way. I do have a good bad one, but I'm not going to criticize them until we get to that point.
Yeah, well, let's do that now. Let's try to conjure something, anything that we can criticize the Wolves about, something that they could correct going forward. Let's start with Reggie, who is Reggie. You're not a very negative soul, so I want to see what you come up with here.
So this is tough. This is tough because, like, you keep three of the top scorers in the league at bay through 2 games, and shout out to you, especially with how they played against them in the 3 games in the regular season. This has been like night and day. But I guess if I had to criticize, I guess I would go I don't know, 3-point shot making. I think maybe that could be better. I feel like the first game wasn't necessarily as glaring as the second game. I'm looking at the stats last night. They went 9 for 32 from 3. And it's like, and you still win by double-digit points. So I feel like I'm being nitpicky, but, I would think, because it's truly dumbfounding to me that Beal, Durant, and Booker are not shooting better than they are. And I know a lot of that goes to the Wolves defense, but I would think that maybe they will wake up and have a similar performance to what we've seen when these 2 teams played in the regular season. And so I think if the Wolves want to make sure that they keep up with, the shooting that could be done by the Suns, that they would be able to shoot the 3 better. And I'm looking at Cat, I'm looking at Ant kind of forced a few threes last night. He knew it wasn't working, but he was like, look, I'm just going to shoot my way out of this. And so I think if I had to be critical, that would be my thing.
Yeah, and it's hard to come up with a whole lot more than that when you look at the box score. So I'm just going to go with not enough Jordan McLaughlin. I need more J-Mac in my life because he was your 3-point shooting specialist late in the season. I think they're probably doing this for defensive reasons. Wasn't part of the rotation last night, but I could see them if things go poorly at some point in game 3 and they need stability on offense. I could see them giving J-Mac some minutes. I like to see more Jordan McLaughlin, and he would also, to Reggie's point, maybe help with some of that 3-point shooting. So, Jack, what do you got for a criticism?
Yeah, kind of along the same vein was just that the Timberwolves haven't gotten a whole lot from Naz Reid and Monte Morris in the first 2 games. And I think Monte Morris has played because he is bigger than Jordan McLaughlin. That's the only reason why I think he's played, because he's got a better chance of contesting some of these mid-range shots than J-Mac does. But in the first 2 games, the Timberwolves have gotten a combined 21 points on 7 of 22 shooting and 2 of 13 from 3 from those 2 guys. So, them playing better may not even matter, or they don't even necessarily need them to play better to win this series, because Nickeil Alexander-Walker has been as good as he's been. But if they want to go deep in the playoffs and potentially, make a Western Conference Finals or God forbid, get to the NBA Finals. They just are really going to need those two guys to be a little bit more consistent. I think they're certainly capable of it, and they've shown it in Timberwolves uniforms, obviously. So, confident that can turn around.
Mm-hmm. Ron.
Yeah, my criticism is petty. But I gotta say, Rudy Gobert, stop Euro stepping. I know you're from France. But the minute he started it was like a giraffe when they're first born. And I was like, it's not going to work out. And then I think he tried to make the pass. Like, he should not be leading a fast break. He should not be doing, like, I like the breakdown. I think Shaq and Kenny Smith did it at halftime of how Rudy Gobert finds his spots. He moves well without the ball. They're finding the big man. He's getting the dunks and blah, blah. Play that game. Play that game. You are not Jokic. Don't try to handle the ball. Don't try to start the break, and stop Euro stepping. Stop it. Stop it.
Ben, nothing more to be added on that, Ron. That was great.
Yeah, I'm not adding anything to that. Lost my train of thought. I'm nitpicking, obviously, as we are, because 2 blowout wins is amazing. But I would say, and maybe I'm getting a little greedy here, but I think the Wolves could do a little bit more in transition. And I know the Suns played faster in the regular season. The Wolves generally like to play at a slow pace because they want to get their half-court defense set. But I think some of it, I don't know, there wasn't really, I guess game 1, there weren't any offensive issues, at least in terms of scoring. A lot of that was the anti-explosion of the third quarter. Game 2, the offense wasn't quite as smooth. And it was really, I guess, it was more missing the open shots that we've already talked about than anything else. The ball movement was fine. But I just think there's more easy baskets to be had in transition. And they were, I think, what were they? A plus 3 in fast break points in game 1. The Wolves were, and a plus 5 in fast break points in game 2. So to run against a team that generally plays at a faster pace than you, they're clearly doing that to some degree. But I just think there could be a few more easy baskets there that also could get Cat going with the trail 3 in transition. There could be some easy 3-pointers that they could have there. And again, maybe I'm getting greedy and I don't want them to speed the game up too much, but I just think there could be a few more baskets. That's one of my criticisms throughout the year for the Wolves. There could be some easy buckets there that they're just choosing to pass up on because they're slowing the pace down so much.
We've reached the part of the show where we predict the week. Between now and the next show, the Wolves play games 3, 4, and 5. So let's start with Jack Borman. Will the series be over, Jack? You seem to think so. Let's get your prediction.
They won't be playing a game 5, man. Sorry.
Clean sweep. Clean sweep from Jack. Ron?
I want to say that too. I want to be like they're going to go 2-0 and don't even need 5. They're going to rest. Rudy Gobert is going to get the layup with his French baby. But I'm going to say 2-1. I think they do close it out in 5. I always wonder too, whatever happened to the Suns guy that was like Suns in 4? Like whatever happened to him? Because I haven't seen him. Maybe we'll see him in this game and he'll say Suns in 6 or something. I don't know. 5-1 though. 5-1.
Okay.
I'm going to say the Wolves win game 3. I think the Suns pull out game 4. They've just got so much offensive firepower and with the home court and officiating. I feel like the Wolves win game 3, Suns win game 4, and then the Wolves close it out in 5.
Reg.
Yeah, I could see the Suns getting 1 of 2 from being at home, and then I could see the Wolves closing it out in game 5. But selfishly, I would like it to go 6 so I can go to Phoenix.
I'm gonna go there will be a 6th game. I think there will be a 6th. I don't want to get too caught up in the euphoria of this moment. I want to give the Suns a chance to defend their home court. I'm going to say 6 games. There will be a game 6 to preview on next week's show. Or we'll be previewing the Nuggets series after they sweep the Lakers, Reggie.
Stop.
Next week. Hey, the Lakers get to defend home court too. I shouldn't apply the same logic. Yeah, they needed to win game 2. It's the Minnesota Basketball Party. Wolves Talk every Wednesday with a panel of experts. We appreciate you watching on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Please hammer the subscribe button or listen to us on the Locked On Wolves podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. For Jack Borman, Ron Johnson, Ben Beacon, Reggie Wilson, and I'm Sam Ekstrom. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll talk to you next week.